The massive space station hung in the darkness like a giant metal flower. Its walls were made of clear material that let everyone see the beautiful stars outside. This was the Grand Arena, the most famous fighting place in the galaxy. Every year, the best warriors from different alien worlds came here to fight and prove who was strongest. Jake Morrison stood near a big window and watched the alien fighters below. He was a tall human with brown hair and calm blue eyes. On his back hung a simple bow made of wood and metal. It looked very old compared to all the fancy weapons the aliens carried. Energy guns that shot bright beams, swords that could cut through steel, and armor that could stop bullets were everywhere he looked. The arena floor was huge and could change into different places for fighting. Right now it looked like a desert, with red sand and tall rocks. 2 alien warriors were fighting down there. One looked like a giant lizard with 4 arms. The other was covered in metal plates and moved like a robot. The crowd around Jake made loud noises as they watched the fight. Many different types of aliens sat in the viewing areas. Some had blue skin and 3 eyes. Others looked like giant insects with sharp claws. A few were so strange that Jake could not figure out what they were supposed to be. All of them were much bigger and stronger looking than humans. Most of them also had weapons that could probably destroy a building. Near Jake stood a woman with short black hair and smart eyes. Her name was Lisa Carter, and she was a doctor who studied alien fighting styles. She held a small computer and was taking notes about everything they saw. Next to her was Helen Rodriguez, an important human leader who spoke for all humans in space politics. Both women looked worried as they watched Jake get ready for his first fight. The aliens around them were talking loudly and laughing. Many pointed at Jake's simple bow and shook their heads. Some made jokes about how humans were too weak to fight real warriors. Others wondered why humans had even been allowed to join this tournament. The betting computers showed that most aliens thought Jake would lose very quickly. A tall alien with crystal skin and 4 arms walked over to where the humans were sitting. This was Vexstar, the champion who had won this tournament 6 times. In a row, he was almost 8 feet tall and electricity danced around his sharp claws. His voice was loud and mean when he spoke. "Look at this funny little creature," Vexstar said as he stared at Jake. "He brings a stick and string to fight against real weapons. Does he think this is some kind of game for children?" Other aliens laughed when they heard this. Some took pictures of Jake and his bow to show their friends how silly humans were. Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he did not say anything back. He had learned long ago that actions spoke louder than words. Lisa leaned close to Jake and whispered, "The computers say we have almost no chance of winning even one fight. Most aliens think you will be beaten in less than 5 minutes." Jake nodded but kept watching the fighters below. The lizard alien had just won his match by hitting his opponent with all 4 arms at once. The crowd cheered as medical robots came to help the loser. Jake noticed how the winner moved and how he liked to attack. Every bit of information might help later. Helen looked around at all the alien faces staring at them. "If you lose badly here, it could hurt all humans in space." "Politics," she said quietly. "Many aliens already think we are too weak to be part of their club. A quick defeat would prove them right." Jake understood what she meant. This fight was about more than just winning a tournament. It was about showing the galaxy that humans deserved respect. For hundreds of years, humans had only lived on Earth. Now they were finally traveling to other worlds and meeting alien races. Most of these aliens were much older and more advanced than humans. They had faster ships, better weapons, and stronger bodies, but Jake believed humans had something special that the aliens did not understand. Humans were good at adapting and finding new ways to solve problems. They did not give up easily when things got hard. And they had thousands of years of experience in hunting and fighting with simple weapons. The bow on Jake's back was not actually as simple as it looked. It was made using the best human technology and materials. The arrows in his case had special tips that could do different things. Some could explode, others could cut through metal, and a few had computer chips that helped them find targets. But to the aliens, it still looked like ancient technology that belonged in a museum. A loud voice filled the arena as an announcer began speaking. The tournament brackets were being shown on big screens around the arena. Jake saw that he would have to win 3 fights before he could face Dexter in the final match. His first opponent would be a hunter from a jungle world who could turn invisible. His second would be a heavily armored warrior who used a giant hammer. The third was a fighter who could read minds and predict attacks. All 3 of these aliens were considered much better fighters than any human. The crowd seemed excited to watch Jake lose quickly so they could move on to more interesting matches. Betting windows were taking money from aliens who wanted to guess how fast Jake would be defeated. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his grandfather, who had taught him to hunt in the forests of Earth. The old man always said that the best hunters were not the strongest or fastest, but the ones who could think and plan the best. He had spent years learning to track animals, to wait patiently for the right moment, and to make every shot count. When Jake opened his eyes again, he felt calm and ready. The aliens could laugh all they wanted. Tomorrow he would show them what a human with a bow could really do. The arena floor began to change as Jake walked down the long tunnel toward his first fight. The flat desert turned into a thick jungle with tall trees and green plants everywhere. Thick vines hung down from branches, and the air became warm and wet. This was perfect for his opponent, a Thrakari hunter named Gorth, who could turn invisible and hunt in forests. Jake stepped onto the soft jungle ground and looked around carefully. The crowd above him was making noise and placing last-minute bets. Most aliens expected this fight to end very quickly. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena as he described how Thrakari hunters were the best in the galaxy at hiding and surprise attacks. Gorth was already somewhere in the jungle, but Jake could not see him. The alien's technology let him blend perfectly with trees and plants. Even the best alien sensors had trouble finding a hidden Thrakari. Jake had watched videos of other fighters trying to fight these hunters. Most never saw their opponent until sharp claws were already cutting them, but Jake had grown up hunting deer and elk in real forests on Earth. His grandfather had taught him to look for signs that animals leave behind. A bent leaf here, a footprint there, the way birds stop singing in one area. These were things that technology could copy, but not perfectly. Jake moved slowly through the fake jungle and listened carefully. He kept his bow ready with an arrow set to shoot. The crowd was getting louder as they waited for Gorth to attack. Some aliens were yelling that the fight was boring because nothing was happening. Then Jake saw it. A small branch moved just a little bit wrong. The fake wind in the arena was blowing from the left, but this branch moved to the right. Jake did not look directly at the spot but kept walking as if he had not noticed anything. He was ready when Gorth finally attacked. The Thrakari hunter appeared out of nowhere with sharp claws reaching for Jake's throat. But Jake was all ready, moving to the side and shooting his arrow in one smooth motion. The arrow hit Gorth in the shoulder, and the alien's invisibility machine stopped working. Green blood dripped from the wound as Gorth became visible. The crowd made surprised noises. Many aliens had never seen a Thrakari hunter get hurt in a surprise attack. The announcer sounded shocked as he described what had just happened. Down in the arena, Gorth was looking at Jake with new respect and anger. The two fighters circled each other carefully. Gorth's shoulder was hurt, but he could still fight with his other arm and his powerful legs. Jake had already put another arrow on his bowstring and was watching for the next attack. The alien tried to move behind trees to break Jake's line of sight, but Jake followed him easily when Gorth attacked again. He came from a different angle and moved much faster. Jake rolled behind a thick tree trunk as claws scraped bark where his head had been. He came up shooting, and his second arrow caught the alien in the leg. Gorth fell down but quickly got back up, now bleeding from 2 wounds. The fight continued for several more minutes. Every time Gorth tried to use the jungle to hide or get close, Jake was ready for him. The human seemed to know exactly where the alien would appear next. Finally, Jake's third arrow found Gorth's chest, and the alien hunter fell down and did not get up again. Medical robots flew down to help Gorth, while the crowd made even louder surprised noises. Jake walked to the center of the arena as the announcer declared him the winner. Many aliens were looking at their betting slips with unhappy faces. The odds on Jake winning is. Next fight got a little better, but he was still expected to lose. The arena changed again for Jake's second fight. The jungle disappeared and was replaced by a flat stone floor like an ancient Colosseum. This was better for his next opponent, a Corothian berserker named Drac, who liked to charge straight at enemies with a huge metal hammer. Drac was twice as big as Jake and covered in thick armor plates. The hammer he carried was so heavy that it would crush a human just from falling on them. Corothians were famous for their strength and their ability to keep fighting even when badly hurt. Most opponents tried to stay far away and shoot at them from a distance. When the fight started, Drac let out a loud roar and began running straight at Jake. The heavy alien's footsteps made the stone floor shake. His hammer was raised high and ready to smash down. The crowd was excited to see if the human's luck would finally run out. Jake did not try to run away. Instead, he stood his ground and aimed carefully at the charging alien. But he was not aiming for Drac's thick skin or heavy armor. Jake had studied videos of Corothian fighters and knew their weakness. The armor had small joints that needed to bend when they moved. These joints were not as well protected. Jake's first arrow hit the joint at Drac's left knee. The alien stumbled but kept charging. The second arrow hit the right knee joint, and Drac's legs began to move strangely. By the time the berserker reached Jake, he was moving much slower and his balance was poor. Jake rolled to the side as the huge hammer crashed down where he had been standing. Stone chips flew everywhere from the impact. But Drac could not lift his hammer again because Jake's third arrow had hit the joint in his right shoulder. The fourth arrow hit the left shoulder joint, and the alien could no longer raise his weapon at all. Drac tried to grab Jake with his hands, but the human was too fast and stayed out of reach. More arrows found the joints in the alien's arms, and soon Drac could barely move. The proud berserker fell to his knees, defeated not by a stronger opponent but by someone who had found his weakness. The crowd was much quieter now. What had seemed like lucky shots in the first fight was clearly skill and planning in the second. Jake had not just beaten two tough opponents. He had made it look easy by using his brain instead of just fighting with strength up in the viewing area. Vexstar was no longer laughing. The crystal alien was watching Jake with narrow eyes and thinking hard. Other aliens around the arena were starting to talk about the human fighter with more respect. Some were even buying small bows from gift shops as souvenirs. Lisa Carter was taking notes on her computer as fast as she could type. The way Jake was fighting was different from anything in their training videos. It was like the pressure and danger was making him fight even better than usual. Helen Rodriguez was smiling for the first time since they had arrived at the arena. Jake walked off the arena floor knowing that his real challenges were still ahead of him. The next fights would be against even stronger opponents who would not underestimate him anymore. But he had proven something important to himself and to everyone watching. Sometimes old ways could still work against new technology. Sometimes being smart was better than being strong. The days between fights passed quickly as news of Jake's victory spread across the galaxy. Alien news networks were showing videos of the human with the simple bow defeating opponents that should have been much stronger. Gift shops around the arena started selling toy bows and arrows. Some alien children were even pretending to be human warriors in their games. Jake spent his time studying videos of his next opponent and practicing in the training rooms. His third fight would be against a Valdorian named Kess who could read minds and see the future. Valdorians were some of the most feared fighters in the galaxy because they knew what their opponents were going to do before it happened. Many warriors had tried to fight them and lost without ever landing a single hit. Lisa Carter was working hard to find any weakness in Valdorian fighting styles. She had computer programs analyzing every recorded fight and looking for patterns. But the results were not good news. In over 200 recorded matches, only 3 fighters had ever defeated a Valdorian, and those victories seemed to be just lucky accidents. Meanwhile, Vexstar was becoming more angry as he watched other aliens starting to respect the human fighter. The Crystal Champion had ruled this tournament for 6 years, and no one had ever challenged his position seriously. Now crowds were chanting Jake's name, and some aliens were even saying the human might have a chance in the finals, Vextar called his advisors together in his private room high above the arena. These were other Zephyrians who helped him study opponents and plan his fights. They all looked worried as their champion paced back and forth with electricity crackling around his claws. "This primitive is making us look foolish," Vextar said in his harsh voice. "Every day he survives makes more aliens think that advanced species can be defeated by crude weapons and simple tactics." One of his advisors, a smaller Zephyrian named Tekmar, pulled up holographic displays showing Jake's fighting style. "His accuracy with that projectile weapon is beyond what our computers predicted," Tekmar admitted. "And he seems to have natural resistance to psychic attacks, which explains how he might survive against the Valdorian." Vextar slammed his fist on the metal table, leaving a dent in the surface. "I do not care about his resistance or his accuracy. When I face him in the final match, I will end this embarrassment quickly and permanently." But first Jake had to survive his fight against Kess the Mind Reader. The arena changed into a maze made of crystal walls that reflected light in confusing ways. This environment was designed to help psychic fighters by creating multiple images and making it hard to focus on just one target. Kess was a tall, thin alien with pale skin and large black eyes. Valdorians looked almost like humans, except for their oversized heads that held their powerful brains. Kess wore simple robes and carried no weapons because Valdorian fighters used their mental powers to predict and avoid attacks. While striking at exactly the right moments when the fight began, Jake found himself in a very strange situation. Every time he tried to aim his bow, Kess would move to a different position before Jake could even pull back the arrow. The alien seemed to know exactly where Jake was going to shoot and was always somewhere else when the arrow arrived. The crowd was fascinated by this mental chess game. Jake would move to get a clear shot, and Kess would already be moving to block it. When Jake tried to trick his opponent by aiming one way and shooting another, Kess was ready for that too. The Valdorian's mind-reading abilities let him see Jake's plans as soon as the human thought of them, but Jake had learned something important during his years of hunting on Earth. Sometimes the best way to catch a smart animal was to stop thinking like a hunter and start acting on pure instinct. Animals that could sense danger often got confused when hunters stopped making plans and just reacted to what was happening in the moment. Jake closed his eyes and tried to empty his mind of all thoughts about shooting or aiming. Instead, he focused on his breathing and the feeling of his feet on the crystal floor. When he opened his eyes again, he was not thinking about where to shoot or what Kess might do next. He was just moving and reacting like he had been trained to do since childhood. This change confused Kess immediately. The Valdorian's large eyes showed surprise as he realized he could no longer read Jake's intentions clearly. Jake's mind had become like a calm lake with no thoughts for the alien to grab onto. When Jake finally shot his first arrow, it was based on instinct and muscle memory rather than conscious planning. The arrow missed Kess, but came much closer than any of the previous shots. The alien had to dive quickly to avoid being hit. For the first time in the fight, Kess looked worried. His mental powers worked best when opponents were actively thinking about their attacks. An enemy who fought on pure instinct was much harder to predict. Jake continued moving and shooting without making detailed plans. His body knew how to use the bow from years of practice, and his eyes automatically tracked the best targets. Kess tried to get inside Jake's mind again, but found only the focused calm that hunters develop when they are completely absorbed in their task. The turning point came when Jake's arrow finally found its mark. Kess had predicted where a planned shot would go, but could not predict the slight adjustment that Jake's instincts made at the last second. The arrow struck the Valdorian in the shoulder, and the psychic feedback from the pain disrupted his mental focus even more, with his concentration broken. Kess could no longer read Jake's mind clearly. The rest of the fight was over quickly as Jake's arrows found their target again and again. When medical robots carried the defeated Valdorian away, the crowd erupted in the loudest cheers Jake had heard yet. Up in his viewing box, Vexstar was no longer just angry. He was beginning to worry that this human might actually reach the final match. The Crystal Champion began making new plans for how to deal with an opponent who had proven he could adapt to any fighting style. Jake stood in the center of the crystal maze, breathing heavily but victorious. He had now defeated 3 opponents who should have been impossible for a human to beat. The betting computers were showing much better odds for his chances. Though he was still considered an underdog against Vexstar, more importantly, Jake could see that the way aliens looked at him had completely changed. Where there had once been laughter and mockery, now there was respect and curiosity. Some aliens were even taking notes on human fighting techniques and asking their own warriors to study bow and arrow combat. Lisa Carter ran down to meet Jake as he left the arena floor. Her computer was filled with data about his performance, and she looked excited and proud. "The readings from your fight were incredible," she told him. "When you switched to instinctive fighting, your brain patterns changed completely." "No wonder." The Valdorian could not read your mind. Helen Rodriguez was also smiling broadly as she joined them. "The political impact of these victories is already being felt across the galaxy," she reported. "Several species that ignored our diplomats before are now asking for meetings. Everyone wants to know more about human capabilities." But Jake was already thinking about his next challenge. Tomorrow he would face Vexstar in the final match, and the Crystal Champion would not underestimate him the way the other opponents had. Vexstar had been watching every fight and learning how Jake fought. The final battle would test everything Jake had learned about himself and about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of powerful aliens. The night before the final match, Jake could not sleep well. He lay in his small room aboard the space station and listened to the sounds of aliens celebrating in the corridors outside. Many species had parties going on as they prepared to watch what everyone expected to be the most exciting championship fight in years. Medical robots had checked Jake carefully after his victory over the mind reader. His armor was damaged in several places and would need to be repaired before tomorrow. More importantly, the doctors wanted to make sure he was healthy enough to face Vexstar, who was known for being very dangerous even to opponents who survived his attacks. Lisa Carter had spent the entire evening studying every piece of information they could find about Zephyrian fighting abilities. Her computers were running complex calculations about Vexstar's speed, strength, and electrical powers. The results were not encouraging for human chances of victory. His bioelectric field can paralyze most life forms that get within 10 feet of him, Lisa explained as she showed Jake the data on her screens. The electricity he generates is strong enough to power a small city. His crystal armor can deflect energy weapons, and most projectiles just bounce off without doing any damage. Jake studied the holographic displays that showed Vexstar's anatomy and fighting style. The alien champion was much larger and stronger than any opponent Jake had faced before. More troubling was his incredible speed. Vexstar could move faster than most beings could see, crossing the entire arena in just a few seconds. "What about weak points?" Jake asked as he examined the detailed scans of Zephyrian body structure. Lisa highlighted several areas on the hologram. "There are joints in his armor where the crystal plates connect, but they are very small targets and he moves too fast for normal aiming. Also, his electrical field makes it dangerous to get close enough for accurate shots." Helen Rodriguez joined them in the preparation room with news from the diplomatic section. "The entire galaxy is watching this fight," she reported. "Win or lose, you have already changed how other species see humans. But a victory tomorrow would establish us as a major power in galactic politics." Jake nodded, but he was not thinking about politics or what other aliens might think. He was remembering lessons his grandfather had taught him many years ago. While hunting in the mountains of Earth, the old man had always said that the biggest and strongest animals were often the easiest to hunt because they relied too much on their size and forgot to be careful. As Jake prepared his equipment for the final fight, he thought about what made humans different from all the other species in the galaxy. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they were very good at solving problems in new ways and adapting when situations changed. They also had something that many aliens seemed to lack, which was the ability to stay calm under pressure and keep fighting even when things looked hopeless. The bow Jake would carry tomorrow was his best weapon, carefully crafted using the finest human technology, but the arrows in his quiver were special. Some had explosive tips that could break through armor. Others were designed to conduct electricity and turn an opponent's own power against them. A few were simple broadhead arrows with molecular sharp edges that could cut through almost anything. If they hit exactly the right spot. Morning came too quickly and Jake found himself walking through the corridors toward the arena. Aliens pressed against the walls to get a look at the human fighter who had made it to the championship match. Some called out encouragement while others just stared in amazement that such a small being had defeated so many powerful opponents. The arena was packed beyond its normal capacity. Every seat was filled and thousands more aliens watched from viewing screens around the space station. News broadcasts were being sent to every world in the galaxy as beings everywhere prepared to see if the human could complete his impossible journey to victory. Jake entered the arena to loud cheers from beings who had become his supporters. Many were holding small human flags or wearing shirts with pictures of bows and arrows. Even aliens who had bet against him seemed excited to be watching such a historic event. Then Vexstar made his entrance and the entire arena fell silent. The Crystal Champion was even more impressive in person than he appeared in videos. Standing almost 8 feet tall, his body was covered in blue-white armor that seemed to be made of living lightning. Electricity danced between his four-clawed hands and his eyes glowed with inner fire when Vexstar spoke. His voice was amplified so everyone in the arena could hear him clearly. "People of the galaxy," he announced, "today you will see why advanced species rule the stars while primitives stay on their little worlds. This human has been lucky so far, but luck always runs out." Jake said nothing in reply. He simply checked his bow one more time and selected his first arrow. The crowd noise faded to a whisper as the two fighters faced each other across the flat arena floor. There was nowhere to hide and no tricks that could help now. This would be a direct test of skill against skill, with the entire galaxy watching. The referee, a mechanical being that could not be influenced by either fighter, began the countdown to start the match. "Fighters, prepare for combat. Remember that this is a fight to the finish. Medical assistance will be provided only after one competitor can no longer continue." Jake felt his heart beating fast, but his hands were steady on his bow. He thought one more time about his grandfather's words about fighting larger opponents. "Do not try to match their strength, boy. Use their size against them. Big things fall harder when they finally go down." Vexstar raised all 4 of his arms, and electricity began flowing more brightly around his body. The air itself seemed to crackle with energy as the champion prepared to show why he had never been defeated in this arena. Jake pulled back his bowstring and aimed carefully, knowing that his first shot might be his only chance to surprise the alien before the real fight began. The referee's voice echoed across the silent arena as beings from hundreds of worlds held their breath. "Fighters ready. Begin combat now." Vexstar moved like a bolt of lightning across the arena floor. His crystal body blurred with speed as electricity trailed behind him like the tail of a comet. Jake had expected this attack and was already rolling to the side when the alien champion's claws slashed through the air where his head had been only a moment before. The crowd gasped as Jake came up from his roll and immediately fired his first arrow. The projectile struck Vexstar's chest armor and bounced away harmlessly, but Jake had not expected it to penetrate. The real purpose was to force the alien to change direction and break. His charging rhythm, Vexstar spun around with incredible grace for such a large being. His 4 arms spread wide as more electricity began building around his body. "Is that the best you can do, primitive?" he taunted loudly. "Your crude weapon cannot even scratch my armor." But Jake was already moving again, firing a second arrow not at Vexstar but at the arena floor near the alien's feet. This arrow had an explosive tip and detonated in a shower of sparks and debris. The blast did not hurt the champion, but it created a cloud of dust that briefly blocked his vision. Jake used those few seconds to put more distance between himself and his opponent. He had studied the recordings carefully and knew that Vexstar's electrical field was most dangerous at close range. The alien could paralyze or even kill opponents who got within 10 feet of his body when he was fully charged. The match settled into a deadly pattern. Vexstar would charge with blinding speed and Jake would dodge or redirect the attack, sometimes by only inches. Each time, Jake would fire an arrow that forced the alien to react, even if the shot did not cause damage. The human was not trying to win quickly, but to make his opponent work harder and use more energy. Minutes passed and the crowd grew more excited as they realized this would not be the quick victory that most had expected. Vexstar's confidence began to show small cracks as he found himself unable to catch the much smaller human. Every charge ended with Jake somewhere else, and every attack was met with an arrow that came uncomfortably close to finding a weak spot. Stand still and fight like a warrior. Vexstar roared as his electrical field flared brighter with frustration. Jake fired another arrow and replied calmly, "I am fighting like a warrior, a human warrior." The alien champion's anger was starting to affect his judgment. His attacks became less controlled and more predictable as he tried to overwhelm Jake with pure aggression. This was exactly what Jake had hoped would happen. His grandfather had always said that angry hunters make mistakes, and the same was true for angry fighters. When Vexstar made his next charge, Jake did something that surprised everyone watching. Instead of dodging away, he ran straight toward the alien champion. The crowd screamed warnings, but Jake had planned this moment carefully. At the last possible second, he dropped into a sliding tackle that took him under Vexstar's guard. As he slid past the alien's legs, Jake fired an arrow straight up into the gap where two armor plates connected at Vexstar's hip joint. The broadhead found its target and green blood began flowing from the wound. For the first time in his career, the champion had been seriously hurt by an opponent. Vexstar stumbled and his electrical field flickered as pain disrupted his concentration. He looked down at the arrow sticking from his side with an expression of complete shock. In 6 championship victories, no opponent had ever managed to wound him significantly. "Impossible," the alien whispered. "No primitive weapon should be able to penetrate Zephyrian armor." Jake was already back on his feet with another arrow ready. "Human weapons," he corrected. "Made by human hands, guided by human eyes, and backed by human determination." The wound was affecting Vexstar's movement and his electrical field was no longer as strong or steady as before. Jake could see that the alien was trying to hide how much the injury hurt, but his left leg was not working as well as it should. Green blood continued to drip onto the arena floor, but Vexstar was still extremely dangerous. Wounded animals often fought hardest when they knew they were in trouble. The alien champion gathered his remaining energy for what he intended to be his final attack. Electricity built around his body until he glowed like a small star. "Even if you defeat me, primitive, you will not survive this attack," Vexstar declared. "I will use all my power to ensure we both die here." Jake had been waiting for this moment. He knew from studying the recordings that Vexstar always finished difficult opponents with a massive electrical discharge that used most of his energy reserves. The attack was devastating, but it also left the alien temporarily drained and vulnerable. As Vexstar began his final charge, electricity streaming from his body like solar flares, Jake stood perfectly still and drew his bow back fully. He had saved his best arrow for this moment, one with a molecular edge tip that could cut through almost any material if it hit exactly the right spot. The alien champion thundered across the arena with all his remaining strength focused into this last, desperate attack. Jake waited until Vexstar was almost close enough to touch him before he released his arrow. Time seemed to slow as the projectile flew through the air toward its target. The specially designed broadhead struck the exact center of Vexstar's chest plate, finding the microscopic flaw that Jake had noticed while studying the recordings. The arrow punched through the crystal armor and buried itself deep in the alien's primary heart. Vexstar's charge carried him 2 more steps before he crashed to the arena floor. His electrical field died instantly, and his glowing eyes went dark. The six-time champion lay motionless as green blood pooled around his massive body. The arena fell into complete silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then the crowd exploded in the loudest cheers ever heard in the grand arena. Beings from dozens of different species were on their feet, applauding and screaming Jake's name. Medical robots rushed onto the arena floor to check on both fighters. Jake was exhausted but uninjured. Vexstar was confirmed dead, his heart pierced by an arrow that had found the one weak point in armor that was supposed to be indestructible. As officials declared Jake the new champion, he stood in the center of the arena still holding his bow. He felt no joy in taking a life, even in honorable combat. But he had proven what he came to prove about human capabilities and determination. Lisa Carter was among the first to reach him as crowds of reporters and officials surrounded the arena floor. "The computer analysis says that shot was impossible," she said with tears in her eyes. "The odds of finding that exact weak point were millions to one." Jake looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him with new respect and understanding. "Maybe the computers do not know everything about what humans can do when they really need to," he replied quietly. Helen Rodriguez pushed through the crowd with a huge smile on her face. "Every species in the galaxy is already requesting new meetings with our diplomats," she reported. "This victory has changed everything for humanity's position in galactic politics." But Jake was thinking about simpler things as medical robots checked him over and reporters asked endless questions. He was thinking about his grandfather's lessons about patience and persistence. He was thinking about the forests of Earth where he had learned to hunt. Most of all, he was thinking about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of beings who had forgotten that sometimes the smallest person could have the biggest heart. As the celebration continued around him, Jake shouldered his bow and looked out at the stars beyond the arena's clear walls. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today about underestimating humans. But Jake knew this was just the beginning of humanity's journey among the stars.